It's a good start to the week. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Kim Young-gil in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. To the surprise of some, South Korea's financial markets brushed off last week's missile test from North Korea. But the government will be on the lookout for any contingency scenarios. Amid the fall in its working-age population, Korea's economic growth rate is being forecast to hit the 0% range within a decade. These stories and more coming up next. North Korea's latest provocation is having a limited impact on South Korea's financial markets. That's the view of the central government, which added it will continue to monitor the situation and take swift action if needed. North Korea tested another missile, the Hwasong-14, shortly before midnight on Friday, its second ICBM launch this month alone. The Korean won fell to 1,125 won on the news, but has since bounced back. In response, officials from the Finance Ministry, the Bank of Korea, the Financial Services Commission, and other relevant bodies held an emergency meeting on Monday. With tensions running high, the government is keeping a close watch on financial markets and the real economy. The Trade Ministry will also open an office to monitor exports, energy, and raw materials, as well as foreign investment, and adopt contingency plans when called for. And moving on to markets, to tell us more about today's stock market action, as well as upcoming market events in the week, we have our market contributor, Lee Jie, joining us on the phone. Hello, Jie.
Hi, Mangil.
So, how did Korean equities perform on the first trading day of this week?
Well, stock closed lower this afternoon after a roller coaster session that saw the index dip in and out of the negative territory. The benchmark Kospi ultimately rose 0.07% to close at 2,402.71, and the Kosdaq fell 0.38% to close at 650.47. The main bourse was weighed by foreign selling, with offshore investors unloading a net 253.2 billion won worth of shares. Auto shares and shipbuilders weighed on the index, while tech shares outperformed to help cushion losses seen in other sectors. Samsung Electronics rose 0.92%, SK Hynix 2.17%, and POSCO 1.37%, while Hyundai Motors, KEPCO, and Samsung Life Insurance suffered losses during today's session.
And could you give us a preview of some of the important market events lined up for this week?
Sure. Starting off today, later in the evening, the preliminary data for the July Eurozone Consumer Price Index is set to be released. Consensus estimates show that low inflation remains a problem. And with this, analysts say that the euro's strength may only be tolerated for so long. Moving on to Tuesday, Korea's Trade Ministry will announce statistics for trends in imports and exports. Many are predicting a low base effect in the second half year, with imports and exports to slow down overall, while remaining optimistic due to a roughly 22% increase in the total amount of exports. Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco President John Williams will be speaking before attending the Economic Club of Las Vegas on Wednesday, and the Cleveland President Loretta Menster will also speak before the Community Bankers Association of Ohio annual convention. Moving on to Thursday, the European Central Bank will release an economic report, which will likely follow up on President Mario Draghi's comments on the balance of risk surrounding the Eurozone, shifting away from deflation, leaving bonds looking expensive.
On the domestic front, the Korea Development Institute will release a report on the economic trends and outlooks for August. Tell us more on that.
Sure. Well, following up on the Trade Ministry and Statistics Korea's reports this week, the KDI will also announce crucial indicators for the third quarter of this year. In its previous report for July, it did state that the current local economy relies heavily on exports and investment, hinting at possibilities of consistent growth. However, with sluggish increases in production, investors will be watching to see if the KDI maintains their initial assessment for the upcoming month as well. Meanwhile, market research firm Moody's said yesterday in its weekly report that they expect Korea's annual export growth to keep rising at a double-digit pace thanks to the sustained uptick in the tech cycle, lifting shipments of semiconductors and machinery, adding that the nation's monthly trade surplus likely narrowed to $9.8 billion in July from $11.4 billion in the previous month. This has been Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
Geopolitical factors continue to weigh on the U.S. dollar. The dollar index that weighs the greenback against a basket of 6 major currencies fell 0.6% on Friday and has continued to fall today. Political uncertainty and weak economic data out of the U.S. has dimmed the prospect of another rate hike by the Federal Reserve within this year. This is appearing to weigh on the currency as it wallows near a 2.5-year low against the euro. With U.S. labor costs rising less than expected and adding to concerns over low inflation, the Japanese yen has reached a monthly high and is expected to continue to rise. Following North Korea's latest ballistic missile test, U.S.-China relationship is being tested, and the dollar's weakness has propelled Chinese yuan to a 9-month high. Growth in China's manufacturing sector ticked lower in July, adding to worries that tighter lending and financial regulations is slowing down the world's second-largest economy. China's official Purchasing Managers Index was reported at 51.4 in July, a slight downturn from June's 51.7, but above the benchmark 50 that indicates expansion. While China's 6.9% growth in the first half was higher than expected, analysts say a closer look at the underlying numbers suggests weakening foreign demand as new export orders fell. An increase in Japan's factory output for June may suggest the country's economic recovery may be on a more solid footing. Industrial output rose 1.6% in June, slightly undershooting a street forecast of 1.7%, but a welcome change from the 3.6% contraction in May. Manufacturers are expecting further output gains in the coming months, evidence that steady overseas demand and consumer spending could support the growth in Japan's economy. Analysts pointed to demand at home and from emerging markets as healthy growth factors that could support economic expansion in the second quarter. Some economists had expressed concerns over piling inventories, but the 2.2% drop in June indicates there may be still room for output to grow. The youth unemployment rate for people between the ages of 15 and 29 climbed above 10% last month, the highest in more than 10 years. And according to new data, the number of new hires at Korean businesses have decreased even further in the first half of this year. Kim Hye-sung reports.
The biggest drop in 7 years. According to Statistics Korea, Korean companies with over 300 workers employed around 2.4 million workers in the second quarter of 2017, a drop of 25,000 from the same period last year, and the biggest margin of decrease since 2010. The number of new hires at Korean companies had been steadily increasing since 2012, but starting 2016, it started falling, even recording a negative growth rate in the first quarter of this year. But the number of employees at small companies, those with 1 to 4 workers, continued to increase, hitting close to 10 million, the highest number in 3 years. Statistics Korea said the number of job seekers is on the rise, but large companies in manufacturing, finance, and insurance are still recovering from the economic slump. Kim Hye-sung, Business Daily.
President Moon Jae-in has tapped a trade expert with years of experience to head the newly created Office of International Trade and Investment. Let's listen in.
President Moon Jae-in today appointed Kim Hyun-jong, professor at the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies, as the new trade minister.
Although a vice ministerial position, Kim will receive title of trade minister as he draws up and negotiates trade deals with other countries. The 58-year-old orchestrated a number of free trade agreements with other countries, including the Korea-US FTA 10 years ago. First on Kim's agenda as trade minister will be to arrange a joint committee session with his U.S. counterpart, as Washington continues to blame the Korea-US FTA for its trade imbalance with Seoul. Korea's outbound shipments to FTA partner countries rose by double digits in the first half of this year. According to Korea Customs Service, exports in the January to June period bound for 52 countries that has a free trade deal with Korea came to $202.5 billion, up 18% from the same time last year. Imports were also up by 17% on year, while Korea's trade surplus with the FTA partners widened to $54.6 billion. The biggest export growth was seen in Australia, which had more than doubled, followed by Vietnam at 53% and India up nearly 23%. Meanwhile, trade to non-FTA countries was also up, exports by 10.5% and imports by 29%. With the countries facing a growing problem of ultrafine dust pollution, there is a growing market for various products and services to help people cope with the problem. Our Lee Jung has more.
40-year-old homemaker Choi Jae-in says she was worried about her children who often cough in the house. She wanted to see if there was a problem with the air, so she hired an engineer that diagnoses indoor air quality by measuring concentration levels of particulate matter.
I was quite worried about fine dust that was prevalent throughout all 4 seasons, but I love this service where they send a technician directly to my house.
On top of this service, she even got her air purifier cleaned up as well. With many consumers finding it difficult to handle the worsening air quality, services like these are gaining popularity.
Many people purchased air purifiers recently, and they need to have them cleaned regularly. It's recommended to remove the dust periodically for optimal performance of the machines.
This problem with bad air is also bringing changes to the home appliance market as well. In addition to air purifiers, sales of so-called health appliances have seen explosive growth, with clothes dryers jumping roughly tenfold, while refreshers have more than doubled in sales in the first half of this year.
Consumers get very concerned about particulate matter when raising their children. Products like clothes dryers and refreshers are incredibly popular.
With the global market for fine dust-related products to grow to roughly $41.8 billion by the year 2023, the competition to occupy a bigger foothold in this market is set to get fiercer. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The number of newborn babies in Korea is expected to drop to a record low this year. According to data from Statistics Korea, the number of births this year is estimated to drop to around 360,000, below the 400,000 mark for the first time. The number of births between January and May was tallied at a record low 160,000, down 12% on year. The latest forecast deals a blow to the Korean economy as the number of newborns is set to fall into the 300,000 range. Experts attribute the fall to rising unemployment among the younger generation, along with the rising cost of living, including soaring housing and education costs. It's no secret that Korea is one of the world's fastest aging nations. As its working age population shrinks, one report warns the country's economic growth could fall to the 0% range within a decade. Eunice Kim has a story.
The number of new births last year reached the unwelcome milestone of being the lowest on record at 406,300. This year, it's poised to drop even further to below 400,000. Data from the central bank shows the fast-aging trend over the past 4 decades has led to a drastic drop in the proportion of people 15 years old or younger, to make up just 20% of Korea's total population as of 2015, while the proportion of those 65 years and older has jumped threefold. The demographic picture 20 years from now is even more sobering. With the elderly population on track to make up more than 50% in dependency ratio, it's projecting every pair of working-age people will have to shoulder the cost of care for a single senior citizen. With the aging population, the country's economic growth is also poised to plummet. The Bank of Korea puts the rate in the 0% range in 10 years and in negative growth by 3 decades.
Our country is not only rapidly aging, but it also lacks retirement preparation. Spending shrinks post-retirement, and we see that decline reflected in the economy at large. Our analysis shows the negative effects of the aging trend will be huge.
In other words, time is taking on a plan of action. Implementing countermeasures such as extending the national retirement age by 5 years and raising women's labor force participation to OECD standards could help keep the growth rate above 1% in 20 years, according to the Bank of Korea.
For the elderly, we need policies that allow them to utilize their work experience. For the young, we need policies that connect education to real-world labor demands.
In addition to customized policies by generation that allows for work-life balance, the bank also suggests recruiting highly skilled workers from overseas, while being mindful of social readiness and of not exacerbating the youth unemployment problem. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
In a society where women are usually expected to take time off after childbirth, more and more Korean men are now taking paternity leaves. Big conglomerates are encouraging their male employees to be with their children, offering subsidies on top of growing government incentives. With fathers taking on more responsibility in raising their children, markets are also catching on to this trend. Let's take a look.
재밌는 책 한번 볼까요? 이거 이현이 아플 때. 의사 선생님이지.
Han Mingyu has a 32-month-old child and he has been on paternity leave for the past year now. After 10 years of working in the public sector, Han says he never imagined himself looking after his daughter while his wife is at work.
After my wife gave birth, she went back to work and we had nobody to look after our child. That's when I made the decision to take paternity leave in order to take care of our daughter.
After his company was relocated to the countryside, Han often left home at 5 a.m. and returned home past 9 p.m. In order to share the responsibilities of childcare with his wife and to better bond with his daughter, Han decided to take time off. In Korea, securing paternity leave is still a difficult proposition. Fortunately, Han works in the public sector, which guarantees paternity leave.
I thought taking paternity leave might be a major inconvenience for my colleagues, so I thought about it for a year. In the end, I decided to take some time off, and I think I can do my job much better when I get back to work.
Thanks to the paternity leave system, Han and his wife are now on their way to having second child. However, they are concerned financially, as government aids are not enough to support them fully.
We were concerned at first since my husband made the bulk of our household income. Although we are on a tight budget now, I'm still working on a job to chip in, and our child has a great relationship with her dad. In light of this, I think it's beneficial to share child care responsibilities with your spouse in the long term.
When I used to work, my daughter would always be in bed by the time I came home. I always wondered if I was being a good father. But after being on a paternity leave for a year, she's a lot more familiar with me. So that helped a lot. I can proudly say that taking paternity leave was the best decision I've ever made.
As more fathers taking part in childcare, baby products have also got a new makeover. Gone are the days when nursery products consisted of colorful pastel tones. Now they come in navy and grey, targeting dads and growing in popularity.
When it comes to my choice of childcare products, I wanted it to reflect my own stylistic preferences, but they were unavailable before. Nowadays, however, there is an increasing number of products that are less colorful and fit the taste of men.
This local brand released a new all-in-one baby carrier. It is a large product designed for easy use by men. It also drew a lot of attention with its catalogue, which advertised darker colors for its products, targeting dads, and made use of a male model.
We are living in the era where there are more and more working moms, so it's only natural that dads are starting to become the consumers of baby products. With our signature baby carriages, we plan to further develop our product line that targets fathers.
Korea is seeing a growing number of men who are taking time off to raise their children. The figure in 2016 jumped 50% compared to a year earlier, and it is expected to reach the 10,000 mark by the end of this year. So far, paternity leave has been introduced in conglomerates and public institutions. But those rights are now expanding to small and medium-sized firms as well.
The expansion of paternity leave allows more time for mothers who had often took care of their children alone. This could also prevent working women from being forced to quit their jobs after childbirth. The need for temporary replacements to fill positions vacated by those on parental leave could also boost employment.
This software company received a presidential citation this year from the Ministry of Employment and Labor for achieving gender equality among its workforce. All male and female employees here have become eligible for parental leave starting in March. Lee Hyun-jae, who is in charge of overseas business at the firm, recently had a baby and is now preparing to go on paternity leave.
I plan to go on paternity leave around next year and will be taking my whole family on a month-long vacation together. Thanks to my company's welfare system, we can raise our child in a healthier environment and I can involve myself more in our family plans.
In addition to parental leave, the company also provides employees with flexible working hours. The firm sees employee welfare as a form of investment rather than simply added expenditures.
Our employees can spend more time with their family and become more productive when they return to work. Thanks to our parental leave program, our balance sheets are showing major growth, so we plan on maintaining this program.
Despite these latest developments, Korea still lags behind OECD peers in parental leave. In Sweden, a father spends on average 300 minutes with their children a day. But Korea comes far short, at just 6 minutes a day.
Parental leave in Korea is supported generously in terms of policy, but only a small number of employees are taking advantage of them. The government should expand financial support to better supplement people's income. The existing corporate culture and conventions are in need of a change as well.
Childcare requires a lot of commitment by both parents. It is hoped that the Korean government will create a framework that allows parents to better raise children in a more supportive environment.
And that wraps it up for today. As always, thank you for watching. We'll be back with more business news tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.